Now, Pavarotti was a good friend.
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. As a disclaimer, this channel is for entertainment purposes. These are my opinions, I'm not here to slander anyone, so let's get into it. First of all, before I get into my video, after much contemplating, thinking, and really feeling bad, I want to apologize to A.R. Hayes. And A.R., I just want you to know that the things that I said about you, man, I don't really feel that way. The best way I can describe my behavior and my responses to what you put out, because I shouldn't have behaved that way, I shouldn't have responded that way. The best way I can describe my behavior is like a third grader in class, and one of the fellow classmates that I thought I was cool with just out of nowhere tells the teacher that that I'm cheating on my test even when I'm not. And that's the kind of that's the mindset. Best way I can describe the mindset I was in. So when I came back, I didn't say things that I truly felt. I strictly said things that I truly felt would hurt, and that was terrible of me. I shouldn't have said those things. I should have just disputed what it was that you had accused me of and showed the facts in it, and then left it at that. So again, as it just was coming from you, man, it just kind of hurt, and I responded terribly, and I do apologize. And I apologize, AR, and you won't hear anything else from me, man. So I don't want to apologize to you and your wife for my response. The things I said were mean, and they were out of meanness, and I shouldn't have done that, and I apologize. Now what I would like to do is just get into the video now that I've got that stuff out of the way. Try to stay away from that drama. I keep saying that. You know what? I get those testosterone treatments, so there's no excuse. But what I want to do in this one is, because of the video series that I put out the other day, I had a lot of great responses, and thank you to everybody that responded and watched. And thank you to everybody that supports me in this. I had a lot of questions. Some of them were recurring. So I wanted to address some of those questions that are recurring and give you my point of view on why I feel that way, and make sure that I'm not incorrect on a couple of things, because I was called out on a few things, and I just want to make sure that that I have all the information as it regards those things, because I'm not perfect. I research and I study hard, but there are some things that I could have missed. So in this video, it's probably long overdue, I want to address a few of those questions. Now, the first one, I'm not going to be able to address in this video. I'm going to have to do an entire video on itself as it relates to that, because I had a lot of people say that, Ann Taylor has stated outright in court that BK was, nowhere near Moscow, Idaho during the atrocity. And I haven't seen that statement by Ann Taylor in court, and I've gone through, I've literally sat here and I've gone through the hearings, and I haven't found where she made that statement. Now, she makes close to that statement in several of in the court docs, and I have gone through and I've pulled every single court doc related to the alibi in general, and there's about 7 different court docs related to the alibi from both the defense and the prosecution. So after pulling all of those up, I think it's something I'm gonna have to address in a video in itself, because there's just so much information as it relates to that, which again brings me back to the point is I cannot understand in the status hearing why the prosecution didn't push for an order on the alibi, because in all of the different back and forth that I've looked at on the alibi, I've never, not once, seen an order from John Judge on any of the motions or responses or objections. He's never ordered anything related to the alibi. In fact, when they brought it up the last time, he was like, oh, didn't we already establish there was an alibi? You're out driving? He didn't even know. And with all the different back and forth on that particular issue, he had to have known. So that he had to. He's not dumb. He had to be playing dumb. I mean, that's all I can figure out. Either he was really not paying attention to anything, or he's playing dumb because he hasn't ordered anything related to the alibi. But anyway, I'm going to go over that in a separate video because it's a ton. The things that I do want to address in this video, though, are one, why I think that BK and Brent Kopacka are connected. That's one that comes up over and over. I want to give you my thoughts and all the angles that I have that puts them two together. The other few, of course, is there's going to be I don't believe that, BK was using the drugs at the time of the atrocity. I'm going to go through and explain why I feel like he most assuredly was. And then there is, I've got this all put together and my mind's going blank. Goodness. Oh, several people have brought up the fact that the 9 a.m. trip back to Moscow was debunked by law enforcement and that didn't really happen. Okay, I want to go over that one. And there's one other one that I'm going to go over. It kept coming up. I guess we're going to go over the other one when I get to it in this video. So let's go ahead and dive right into to those questions, and I will answer them to the best of my ability why I feel that way. Hopefully get some clarification. Okay, well, now the first thing, this wasn't even one of the ones that I was talking about, but I have had this one come up several times about the video I did last week when I referenced the FBI numbers. And a lot of very smart people have pointed out the fact that, you can get an FBI number for many different reasons. And I agree with them on that. And I'm not saying that I'm 1,000% accurate on this, but I was pretty confident I was pretty accurate, because when I talked about the FBI number, it wasn't the fact that they had FBI numbers. It was the placement of the FBI numbers in their court docs on their cases. Like I'm taking Michelle here and two of her charges. And I know I showed this in the video, but the first charge was in, when was this? Oh, this was in April of 2022 when I suggested that she was still in the informant program. And then when you look at the info right here in this little box, this is what I'm referring to. And because it gives you the due date, the address of where she lives in Coeur d'Alene, the county ID and the state ID. And I could be wrong, but it's my contention that putting the FBI number in this position on this particular info block, that means that your butt is owned by the FBI by doing that. You see, because right next to it, we have the exact same record, just at a different time in 2023, after I said that she would no longer have been under that particular program. And you can see everything else is almost exactly the same, but see in this particular box, we've got the date, and then we've got her same address, we've got the same county ID and the same state ID, but her butt is no longer owned by the FBI because they didn't put her number right here in this box. That's simply what I was stating. But I've been wrong before, so that may be something I'm wrong about this time. I'm not going to stake my life on it, but I'm pretty certain that I'm probably correct on that, but maybe not. All right, so let's go to the one that I get asked quite a bit, and that is why do you think Kohberger knew Kopacka? A lot of people say, I don't believe he knew Kopacka, and that's fair. Let me tell you why I feel like the Kopacka connection is essential in this. Number one, law enforcement, these investigators, when they went into the crime scene and they put this thing together, I'm sure when they went to the crime scene, it was apparent to them very quick. I mean, investigators that are used to investigating things like this, they know what's possible and what isn't. They know that this thing had to have more than one perpetrator. I mean, they know this couldn't have been done by one perpetrator in the manner that it was done. So they're looking for multiple perps from day one, from the time they walk in there. When they really put it all together with a timeline and everything, they're absolutely looking for more than one perp. So with that in mind, if they know more than one perpetrator is involved in this atrocity, then when they focus in on BK, even if they're unsure if he is the real assailant, if nobody is with him, that would have eliminated them from even trying to seek prosecution. By having somebody with them, that can check that box that they needed to check to be able to move forward with a prosecution against BK based on the lack of evidence that they have, or the evidence that they have. But without Kopacka, I don't believe they would have ever gone forward trying to prosecute BK in this case. So that's number one. There had to be another perp. Law enforcement knew there was more than one perp, so BK would have had to have somebody with him for them to move forward. Now, the likelihood of that person being Kopacka, in my opinion, is very, very high. We obviously all know that they lived, in very close proximity in Pennsylvania at one point. And then they lived in very close proximity in Washington State, 2,000 miles away. So that is ancillary. They should know each other. But when you add everything together, it makes the likelihood of this pretty likely. Then we've got the drug use of both of the individuals. I believe they were both abusing the same drugs, and don't worry, I know that's one of the things that I hear is people don't believe BK was using. I am addressing that one in this video as well. But I believe with both of their drug use, their proximity, everything else that's involved, it makes it very likely that they were hanging out. The route BK took on the night of the atrocity literally drives him past Kopacka's apartment. I mean, like literally to his almost front door, leaving out from Washington State University. And then returning, he drives literally almost to his front door of his apartment, returning home. And we know both of those to be a fact based on the video evidence of the movements of the Elantra in Washington State. Then we have the fact that Kopacka is killed by law enforcement just 5 days prior to Kohberger being injected into the investigation. Now, to deny that fact, you can't deny that fact because that's a fact. I mean, it literally happened. So we've got somebody that fit everything I've said up to this point, and they're killed by law enforcement just a few days prior to Kohberger's name being injected in the investigation. Then we have the fact that BK and his dad, when they're pulled over, his dad's first thing they ask is about the Kopacka incident, as if BK had been discussing it with him and it sounded like something that was very important to him. And then I have my final point, which is when we add in the informant's angle into this case, when you're looking at my theory on how all this took place, the informants are crucial, and the informants really only work with Brent Kopacka. So if I'm wrong, and when this goes to trial, if Kopacka has absolutely nothing to do with it, half of my theory goes out the window at that point. And I'm willing to stake everything on it that Brent Kopacka is part of this is half of my theory. I'm that confident that those two know each other. So other than that, I mean, there's a lot of other information. You know, you could go by the hearsay that, you know, maybe Brent Kopacka was a security guard in DeSales University. Maybe he's a security guard at Washington State. I mean, I don't have any way to verify any of that. There's other, you know, hearsay talk that I could bring up, but I'm not going to bring up any of that. I'm just going by the factual, logical evidence that I'm using to determine those two were together that night. So, can I prove it? No, not at this point. But that is why I truly believe that BK and BK not only knew each other, but they were with each other that night. Now, the other, let's take a look here. Where was I at? What's wrong with my cursor? Okay. Now we've got BK using the substances. I know a lot of people that especially if they truly believe that BK is innocent in this, they don't want to believe BK was using substances. And I get that. I just, from everything that I've looked at as it relates to this, I'm about 99.9% sure that BK was using substances again. And these are the reasons that I'm going to use to back that up. Now, the first thing is the interview that one of the news crews did with BK's neighbors, his downstairs neighbors that live directly below him. I'm not going to go through with putting up that video again. I think I've already done that in 2 different videos. But when they were interviewed, the only thing they could say about Kohberger was the fact that he kept them up all night long until the early morning hours, all the time, vacuuming, cleaning, and making noise. Their only complaint about him was the guy never went to sleep. They said during the day there was no noise because he was at school, being a school, going to school and being a substitute professor. But other than that, he stayed up all night, not just stayed up and was awake staring at the wall. He was up vacuuming, taking showers, washing his dishes. I mean, he's doing active things that, typically people don't do at those hours of the night. Now, if that was the only thing, then obviously I wouldn't make this claim. But we know for a fact that Bryan Kohberger was a previous drug addict, to the point where he actually had to go to rehab 2 different times to get his addiction under control and get his life turned around. Now, previous drug use of an addict it's a lot more difficult for a drug addict to not relapse than it is for somebody that's never done drugs to actually start using drugs. And one of the keys that I've zoned in on was the fact that BK was going to the bars here and there and he was drinking. I don't believe he was going into the bars getting drunk and being unruly with women like the reports say, but I do believe he was going in the bars and putting a few back. Well, you can't do that when you are a drug addict and you're in recovery. And this is from Narcotics Anonymous explaining why I say that. Because alcohol is an inhibitor. Alcohol, like illicit drugs, is mind-altering substance that affects your judgment, your mood, and your actions. Groups like Narcanon consider alcohol a drug and welcome those in need of both alcohol abuse and drug abuse treatment into their programs. But why do they consider alcohol a drug and it's Narcotics Anonymous and not Alcoholics Anonymous? Because of what happens when you drink and you are a drug addict. When our judgment is affected, we may struggle with making good decisions or fall into harmful behaviors. One cannot typically become sober on willpower alone, and adding a mind-altering substance to the mix can make sticking to your drug abuse treatment and recovery much more challenging. Studies have indicated those who consume alcohol while in recovery from drug abuse are at risk of experiencing, it's called an alcohol-induced relapse, meaning the inhibitions they experience while drinking, even in perceived moderation, could trigger a desire to return to their drug of choice. And it also lowers their inhibition to where if they have been drinking and they come across somebody that they know or they knew and they have substances, if you've been drinking, you're about 20 times more likely to indulge in those substances, because once you're drinking, your decision-making skills are greatly hindered. So the fact that he was drinking, that's a no-no if he's in recovery. Then we've got this. And when we take the timeline, and we know for a fact that, BK, he was active from Friday morning till at least late Sunday night. Not just active. He's out driving around, going halfway across Idaho and probably into Montana and back during this time period. So he's not just awake staring at a wall. He's actually active doing things. So if we assume he wakes up Friday, November 12th at 8 a.m., we know based on his movements and the phone pings and everything else that he's going nonstop Friday, Saturday, and let's assume he gets home and goes to bed by 10 o'clock on Sunday night. That's 58 hours that he's awake and active. Folks, as much as you want to believe it being on the spectrum, does not answer that question. It is not a reason for that. On the spectrum, being awake for 58 hours straight and going and driving and doing things, people on the spectrum don't do that for fun. Insomnia, not going to do it because they're going to be staring at a wall. Amphetamines will do it without even batting an eyebrow. You can do amphetamines on Friday and he is gone till Sunday night and he doesn't even need to close his eyes. So my take is BK was definitely using substances again. Now, the last part to that is obviously, I believe once he got back to Pennsylvania, he had a couple of weeks up there that he probably didn't have any access to the drugs, and he was probably able to get him a little sleep and get some food in him and start to get healthier. But on the way back with him and his dad, when they get pulled over and you look at BK right here, this right here is, if you had any experience with trying to identify people who are on uppers, let me tell you, the first thing that you're taught to look for is the whites of their eyes, folks. Do you see nothing but whites when you look in their eyes? So that way when you look at somebody like this and you see the whites of his eyes going all the way around in a complete circle on both of his eyeballs, and then if you were to look really close, those pupils are the size of his retinas. He's got a little bit of a sunk-in face on the sides. Look at that look with that brow. This is somebody that is probably not abusing a whole lot, but it's definitely somebody that's using. And you can agree or disagree with me all you want on that. My assertion is he was definitely using. And then the final nail in the coffin on that is law enforcement went after him not because he was a pristine PhD student that could do nothing wrong. They found something once they got on Kohberger. They found something out about him that he was using from the beginning, and that's why they focused in so hard on him as a suspect and then going forward with prosecuting him, even though they probably don't believe that he really committed the atrocity. So when you take all of those things into mind, and there's other things, I'm just not going to put them in here, I believe, like I said, 99.9999% that he was definitely abusing, and he was abusing stimulants. So those are the questions that I've got over these last couple of videos, and I wanted to go through again and just give you my perspective on those. And then I'm going to dive into the... Oh, wait. There was one other one that I was going to talk to you about. Okay, yeah, this one right here. Okay, I had several people tell me that the trip back to Moscow at 9 a.m. the next morning was debunked by law enforcement, and that wasn't real. Okay, now because it is in the PCA. Now, if I'm wrong on this, I'm wrong, and I'll admit it if you show me. But in the PCA, it clearly states that he made a trip to Moscow at 9 a.m. that morning, and then came back based on his CAS data of his phone, or his phone pings. So the only people that could debunk that, and I believe, would either be Brett Payne, who wrote the PCA, or Bill Thompson. And I don't think either one of them have come out and made a statement that there was incorrect information in the PCA. But if I'm wrong about that, please let me know. But if it is true that he did make that trip there and back, we have to understand that that'll be easily verifiable for law enforcement, because based on the timeliness of that trip, he would have taken 270 straight from his apartment to the house and then straight back. And that's one of the reasons that I say he was going to see what was going on, to see if he really thought that something there had happened or not. And he wasn't looking to hide his location or anything. He took his phone, jumped in his car, drove straight to that house, and then drove straight back. And he would have known he would have been tracked. And all those video cameras that maybe couldn't identify vehicles in the dark, you can bet they could identify vehicles in the daylight, and they would know that was his. And just a few hours later, you can bet they have video footage of that. So I think this question is coming from a misreading of the PCA, and let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, so here's the PCA as it regards that particular incident. And it says, further review indicated that the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources on November 13th, 2022 that are consistent with the 8458 phone leaving the area of the Kohberger residence at approximately 9 a.m. and traveling to Moscow, Idaho. Specifically, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to the King Road residence between 9:12 a.m. and 9:21 a.m. The 8458 phone next utilized cellular resources that are consistent with the 8458 phone traveling back to the area of the Kohberger residence and arriving to the area at approximately 9:32 a.m. So they're saying basically he left the house at 9, went to the King Road residence, came straight back, and he was back at his apartment by 9:32. So you're talking about 32 minutes. He would have had to gone straight there and straight back. And again, that's why I have the assumption that he went there, looked, didn't see any ambulances or police, thought, well, it wasn't anything, went back home, continued with his day. But I think where people are getting this confused that this didn't really happen is in the next part of the PCA. Because it says investigators found that the 8458 phone did connect to a cell phone tower that provides service to Moscow on November 14, 2022. But investigators do not believe the 8458 phone was in Moscow on that day. The 8458 phone is not connected to any towers that provide service to Moscow since that date. Well, they're saying right here on November 14th, 2022. You see, at 9 a.m., that would still be November the 13th, 2022. This is saying on Sunday that the phone connected to a tower, but they didn't believe he actually went to Moscow on Sunday, November the 14th, 2022. Not November the 13th at 9 a.m. So I think that's where people may be getting confused on that. But if law enforcement has come out and stated that's incorrect, it's not the first time I've been wrong on something. Just please let me know. But I believe that's the right answer. Now I hope I answered those particular questions to your satisfaction. Again, I know they were coming up many times over in my posts, and I wanted to do that. And I will make an entire video on the alibi, addressing the other questions that kept coming up about Ann Taylor stating that Kohberger was never in the area of Moscow on the night of the atrocity. I don't believe she ever stated that, but I will review again the hearings just to make sure that I didn't miss something again. And then I will go through the, all the court docs on the alibi. And there's some very interesting things when you put all of those court docs together. And I also think it's important for us to keep that in mind, because we should all be kind of pushing to hear the alibi statement so that we can verify some things. And the prosecution should want it. Based on what they've done up to this point, they should be pushing for it. So the fact that they're not is very, very suspect to me at this point. But please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, thoughts, criticisms. And until next time, Pavarotti's out.